Happy New Year, Tanya.
Well, thank you. Happy New Year. It's hard to believe that last year is behind us and it's a whole fresh start right ahead of us. It's amazing.
It is amazing. So you are really an expert in time management, organization, all the things that many of us feel very lacking in. How did you get into that arena?
That's a good question because it's definitely one of those things that everybody I meet always is like, I need more of that. I'm like, yes. And that's the thing is we all need to be, it's really about intentionality. I like to say that productivity isn't about doing more, it's doing what's most important. And people get excited about productivity and they come in the door and I'm like, it's really intentional living. That's what being productive is really about. So I got into this space I like to say I started life thinking I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. I had been a teacher for many years. And then I had my son, Jack, and I left teaching to be a stay-at-home mom. And I thought that's what I was going to be. That was going to be who I was. And I was really excited about that. And so my husband at the time was traveling a lot. He was doing marketing for Fortune 500 companies. And so he would leave our home in Dallas, Texas. He'd buy a ticket called the Around the World ticket. He would leave our home in Dallas and he would literally circle the globe, going all the way around the planet, back the other side. So he'd be gone for like 3 or 4 weeks at a time. And I had a conversation with him on one of his trips where, the phone rang and I answered the phone. I was telling him all the things that the kids were doing. And he got really quiet. And I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I'm missing everything. I'm missing all the milestones. I'm missing the moments with the kids. I'm missing it all." And I said, no, it's going to be okay. But I hung up the phone that night and I changed my whole trajectory of what my world looked like. I made a decision I was going to grow my little side hobby business. I had started a business for like $50. It was supposed to be like my side thing that I did just for fun to keep me occupied, entertained. I decided I was going to grow that from $50 to large enough where it could absorb his MBA income and he could come and work alongside of me so that we could have the freedom we wanted, the lifestyle freedom, the time freedom, the financial freedom, which was audacious, really big for someone like me who had zero business experience and was selling at the time to friends, maybe friends of friends. And that was about it. But I stood in my kitchen, I made these plans out, and within about a year, I made that goal happen. So I was able to have him come work alongside of me. That was in 2009. Which then allowed us the location freedom to move where we wanted to move, which was Asheville, North Carolina. And then in 2013, I looked at him and I was like, I love you. I love working with you. I don't love what we're doing. It wasn't making a big enough impact. I used to be a teacher. Teachers are all about making a difference, making an impact. And he was like, "Great. What do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. What if there's nothing else out there? What if I don't know what that is?" So we decided I was going to take some time to really dive into what I was passionate about. And as I was doing this exercise for myself, I already knew I was passionate about teaching. Once a teacher, always a teacher. It just is one of those things that you almost can't help yourself. I loved empowering women, but there was that third arm of productivity. That was the other thing that I really loved. And I think it was the fact that I am very productive, just very naturally. It's one of the gifts that God has given me. And I was able to scale and grow my business so quickly because of that. And when I was teaching other women what I was doing, they weren't doing anything at all like what I was doing. And I was like, oh, hold on, wait a minute. You don't do batching. You don't do theme days. You don't do, systems. You don't do, these were things I just did naturally. And so I really began to recognize that was a big part of the gifts that God had given me. And I wanted to lean into that more. So I took those 3 things: productivity, teaching, and empowering women. And the thread that connected all 3 of those was Inkwell Press Productivity Co., the company that I founded and created. And so I stepped more fully into that gift. I truly believe every one of us is designed for greatness. I truly believe God has designed us with a greater calling and a greater purpose. And it is oftentimes stopping and listening to that calling that allows us to lean into it. And so for me, productivity is one of those things.
Okay, well, God bless you for being someone who has been gifted in productivity, because I think we're all just kind of standing jaw dropped a little bit by, wait a minute, it took 1 year for you to have your husband come home. I mean, what in the world? And so we could go heavy into that, but I'm going to pull back a little bit because we are talking about the healthy way to productivity today. But really tell us, I mean, how you're getting to that point of, we all have gifts, talents, time, resources,
Mhm.
but how we spend them is actually really important. So, how in the new year do we kind of bring fresh eyes to this? I mean, how do we do it differently? Because I will tell you, I have a lot of things that I want to do, and I have a lot of plans on how I'm going to get all that done. And I usually end up with maybe a quarter or a third of it done, and I get really
Mhm.
frustrated. And so I would imagine that most people are in the same position of why is this not working? So, what can we do?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I love that. And this time of year is a great time of year. And I'm going to say that caveat with that's true if you're listening to this in January as this is live. That is true if this is March or
Mhm.
June or August. It's a good time to stop and do an intentional pause. And I think that word intentional here is really key. Stopping and reflecting and asking yourself the questions of what do I feel called to? What do I feel compelled to? What do I get excited about? What do I love in my life right now? What do I not like? What's the good? What's the bad? What's the ugly? I think so often we want to shy away from the ugly. We want to shy away from the things we don't like in our past. We want to just shove them under the rug, right? And just pretend they're not there. And that is truly where a lot of our growth happens. It's when we dive into those that we see the messages that we're receiving. It's when we stop with the intentional pause that we can hear the whisper on our soul. That's when we can really listen to it. When we stop chasing busy for just a little bit and choose to listen. So it really is so important, I think, to stop and ask yourself those questions. What do I love? What's going well in my life? What do I want to change? Oftentimes it's the regret that is the most fertile ground of all. We can push against regret into resilience to really defining what it is we want. And the truth is, we all want a lot of things. We like to say that we're multi-passionate, but in the book, in On Purpose, I talk about, can we stop saying we're multi-passionate? Can we stop saying that? Because the truth is, we are all multi-passionate. Every single one of us on this planet loves more than one or two things. I love 1,000 things, and you do too, right? But it's choosing to focus. That's what's going to really help move the needle. The cost of greatness is commitment. It's choosing to focus in on fewer things. So really going through, asking yourself those questions. What do I feel I was designed for? What do I really want to do? What do I not like? So I know what I do like. Asking yourself those questions is going to be really powerful. And then to really accomplish those things, we want to create a framework for ourselves. So I'm happy to walk through a framework of, especially for those people who feel like I have 5 million things on my list of things to do. How do I get it done? I have a framework that I have taught in the past called the 5 Ps that I think is really, really helpful. And it helps you accomplish what it is you need to accomplish. Because I think so often what we do is this: we chase a to-do list that's 1,000 miles long, right? It's
Yeah.
like keeps getting
Yes.
longer and longer, and it gets
Mhm.
longer as the day goes on because we keep adding things to it.
Mhm.
And we check 1,000 things off. We run around busy. We fall into bed at night and we're exhausted. We're overwhelmed. We're worn out. And we think to ourselves, oh, why didn't I get more done? Even though we were busy all day long, right? Even though we checked 1,000 things off our list, it's because we're trying to do all the things instead of
Yes.
doing the things that matter most, right? So it's this whole idea again of productivity isn't about doing more. It's doing what's most important. If I said to you, let's take 50 steps in 50 different directions, where are you going to end up? Maybe in the same place, maybe further behind, who knows, right? But if we chose instead to take 5 steps, 5 intentional steps in the same direction, moving forward, where are we going to end up? Closer to where we want to go. It's not the quantity, it's the quality of the work that we're doing. It's really sitting down and choosing how we spend our time, because that is a choice. So I'll just really quickly go through the 5 Ps, because I think that's one of the easiest ways to really get started thinking about this. The first P is to purge. We want to get that list out of our head and onto a sheet of paper. So this is just like a brainstorm. What is it I want to accomplish this week? What are the big things I want to do? I actually do this twice. I do it on Sundays with my family. I call that team planning for my family. So we sit down, we map out what the kids have going on, who has projects due, what they're going to work on this week, what chores need to happen, what activities. And I do it on Mondays for work. I very intentionally keep those separate. But what I'm doing is I'm taking my brain and no longer using it as a filing cabinet and getting it on a sheet of paper, right? So that, first of all, alleviates the stress. But then I'm going to use that purge that brainstorm as my well that I'm going to draw from throughout the week, right? So I'm not always like, oh, what is it I need to do? I'm using that document to get me started, which brings me to my second P, which is to process. We want to sit down each day and process, what do I want to accomplish today? I think so often we want to map out our week on Monday or Sunday, and we want to map out the whole week. And what happens is when we decide what we're doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, what happens is Monday's great. Monday's amazing. We get 1,000 things done. Tuesday happens and it's just a hot mess, right? You wake up with allergies. You maybe don't get nearly as much done as you wanted to. So what happens is Wednesday we wake up, we're already behind. We already feel like, oh, I'm not going to get it all done. And then Thursday we feel like we failed because we're behind all week. Treat every day as a gift. Every day is a new opportunity. It's a clean slate. So let's treat it each day that way. So we want to start by just processing. And that takes like 5 or 10 minutes just to sit down, process, what is it I want to accomplish today? And I like, when I'm talking about processing, I like to think about what is the feeling I want to have at the end of the day. You know, if Kay has a volleyball game, I want to feel present for that. So presence is what I'm focusing on. If I have a big presentation the following day, I want to make sure I'm prepared, right? So it's not the same every single day. How do I want to feel at the end of the day? And then I'm going to do my third P, which is to prioritize. I'm going to take that big list that I made from Sunday or Monday, and I'm going to prioritize what are the 5 things I want to get done today. And I walk through how you can create a priority list, which is really, really simple to do in my book, The Joy of Missing Out. But you're basically just making your list so it's ordered with priorities on top, working your way down, right? So that way, you know what you're going to start on, you know what you're going to work on next, and you work your way down that priority list. Which brings me to my fourth P, which is protect. We want to protect our time. So carving out and really blocking off time for ourselves throughout the day to accomplish those tasks. Instead of just feeling like, well, those tasks will get done at some point, I'm going to really intentionally carve out an hour here. From 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock, I'm going to do this priority. And then from 11:30 to 12, I'm going to work on this priority, and start really protecting that time. Set your calendar before you give other people access to your calendar, right? Put your priorities in first, and then let others fill in theirs later. Otherwise, you're scrambling to try to like squeeze things in, right? What we want to do is we really want to have ownership over that calendar. And then we get to our fifth P. So we had purge, process, prioritize, protect, and the fifth P is to propel. At the end of the day, take 5 minutes. Take 5 minutes and do this quick little activity. During minute 1, you're going to write down the things you accomplished today. I think so often we forget all the good we did, right? Which is why we fall into bed and we go, oh, didn't get enough done. We forget that we did 6 million things throughout the day. So taking 1 minute just to give yourself a pat on the back is so motivating. Then we're going to spend a minute assessing, how did I feel today? Did I put too much on my plate? Was my list of things to do too long and I feel overwhelmed by it? Then during our third minute, we're going to think about, how did I work today towards a goal? What's one thing I did today to get closer to a goal? Then during minute 4, what are 3 things I'm grateful for today? And then minute 5 is, what would I like to accomplish tomorrow? Get it out of your head onto the sheet of paper. Again, not using your brain as a filing cabinet. And what I love about this little 5-minute activity is it's 5 minutes. So it's easy to do. I take that sheet of paper, you know where I put it? I put it on my desk, where I'm going to do my processing the next day. So I use that as my springboard the next day. I start by looking over my wins, thinking about what I was grateful for, right? And I have a list already of, these are the things I want to do for the following day. So creating that really beautiful cycle of just continually, first of all, rewarding yourself, creating a day that's achievable rather than way too many things on our to-do list, that's going to build that feeling of momentum and that velocity. And that's how you're going to accomplish the things you really want to get done. You're going to prioritize them.
Okay. So I'm hearing you on all of this, and I do a number of these things. I do the purge. Often I do a daily purge because but I mean, maybe I combine the process and the purge, and then I prioritize, and then the school calls, or then somebody walks in the door and all of a sudden I have a 2-hour unexpected interruption that seems to be pretty frequent, not that individual interruption, specific one, but just the fact that life happens. So how, knowing that about my life, Should I just right size what my priorities are for the day? And should I be realistic? Even if I look at my calendar and say, okay, I have 6 hours with no kids here. They're all at school. Oh, but then this happens. My mom stops by and the dog gets out of the yard and whatever it might be, things happen. How do we make space for all of that while still trying to take those 5 steps in the same direction? Because we feel like life is telling us to take 50 steps in 50 different directions.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is. And this is a thing too, especially if you're seeing that consistently, you're having like, a 2 hour, or I have an hour. Let's build that in. Let's build in that flexibility. I think this is the thing is when people think about productivity, they think of it being this super constrained thing. And I think the way that a lot of people do talk about it, and let's be honest, 99.9% of productivity experts are men, right? They're not women like us who have to deal with kids needing to be picked up from school or all the different things that we do at home. Oftentimes we may be the CEO of the office, but we're also the CEO of the home, that we run our homes as well. So we need to build in that flexibility and that grace. So first of all, having on your list only 5 things versus the 50 you've had in the past, that's a place to start, right? By making your day more achievable, which means a lot of those things that are on your list, you need to really take a good look at and say, do I really want to do these things? Am I saying yes to far too many things? Because every time you're saying yes, you're saying no to something else, right? Oftentimes your priorities, your goals, your passion project, the things that are truly the things that you want to do, right? But what I would say is when you're mapping out your day, build in that grace and that flexibility. If you have 5 things on your list and you think it's going to take you 2 hours to get them done, go ahead and carve out your 2 hours, but leave open blocks of time that are just open for free space, right? Like, okay, I might need to move this block here, or I might need to ship this. And instead of working on this project for an hour, I'm going to do 4 15-minute blocks, right? Building in a lot of that grace is so important. There's a reason why buildings and bridges are built to be flexible, because they're designed to withstand the winds of a tornado or a hurricane, right? We need that same flexibility and grace in our own lives. So really building in and blocking off time that's just open. This is the truth, is we feel obligated to fill every space in our calendar, and you don't have to. What if you just had space that was like, this is the parking lot. Like, this is where I put things that I'm not sure where else it's going to go. And if I need to, I can just clear it and pop this priority in there because mom just stopped by, or the school just called and somebody had a bloody nose and I have to go bring a shirt up to the school. All those things happen, right? So building in some blocks of flexibility is a great way to make that happen. And guess what? If you don't need that block, bonus, that's time for you. Go for a walk, take a bath, read a chapter of your book. Make a list for yourself of things that you would like to do if you didn't have to use that time at all. Keep that in your planner so you can reference it. Because what happens is we default to scrolling on our phone, right? Like, oh, I have 15 minutes, so I'm just going to scroll. When instead, you could actually get something done that feels truly nourishing and nurturing to your soul. Maybe it's working on a devotional or doing something like that. But really building in blocks of free space in your calendar, that's life-changing when you start to recognize that, especially if you're seeing on a regular basis that you need it. Gift yourself that. That's an investment in you.
That's a great point. I really like that. And I think about when you were doing your original business, I mean, you said a stay-at-home mom at that point. So you were having to do all of these things that you're talking about.
Yeah. I like to say I built my business with two small kids playing at my feet. I literally had 2 kids playing at my feet, and I worked on my business on days when there was Mother's Day out or preschool. And those were my days where I did work, or I did my more heavy lifting of my work. Now, the truth is our kids can be trained. And I think this is the thing. I think so often as young moms, especially, we think, well, I don't have any time for myself. There's no way I can do these things. I used to be a teacher. So the truth is, if you ever walked into a school or seen when the kids are doing a fire drill, like the parents are amazed. They're like, oh, how do you get them to line up? And they have one hand over their mouth and the other one behind their, like, how do you do that? And the truth is, teachers are not like miracle workers. They kind of are. But what it is practicing. we practice it. We don't just, all of a sudden kids know how to do a fire drill. We rehearse it. We practice in the hallway. We go, okay, pretend it's a fire drill. I would do that with my kids when they were really little. I had a ringtone that was for when people were calling me for my business, and my kids knew my ringtone. So we would practice it on the front end. I would turn the ringtone on. I go, oh, work call. What do we do? And they would scramble around and they would run over. And I had a little chart where they would point to an activity that they could do, right? Because they couldn't read at the time. So it'd be like, coloring in a coloring book, reading a book, watching a TV show. They would point to an activity and I would give them like a thumbs up. And they knew that meant they were going to go do that activity until I was off the phone. People are like amazed by that. And I'm like, we just practiced it. You know what? We made it fun. Kids love to role play. So that's just one example. The other things I would do when my kids were really little was I brought them into my business. I made them feel like the business was always a family business. I would sit there and I'd be working on something and I'd go, oh gosh, I have this giant stack of paper that I need to get done. And every single one of these needs a Snoopy sticker. I really need a Snoopy sticker in every one of these. Obviously, I didn't need a Snoopy sticker, right? But they would say, oh, I'll help. And I'd say, oh, could you? That would be such a big help to me. And I would give them very specific instructions. So it would take them more time. And they would put a Snoopy sticker on the right corner of every piece of paper. And then they would stack it up. And I'd say, oh my goodness, that was so helpful. So while they're doing their Snoopy sticker, I'm getting my stuff done. But I'd say, I couldn't run this business without you. We are such a great team. And that would build that team mentality, right? But they also always felt like they were a part of growing my business. So they still feel that way. I mean, my kids would still go to the office. My son worked in the warehouse when he was in high school. They come up and they make boxes. They do all kinds of things to help the business. So really thinking outside of the box, we can open up those possibilities of bringing them in and making them a part of our world.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's that whole creative thinking that we like to talk about the sisterhood a lot. Just how can we be creative in our thinking to make this work? So you also talk about habit stacking. So can you just briefly kind of cover what is habit stacking and how do we do it in our daily lives?
Yeah, I love this question because I think habit stacking is one of those things where you figure it out and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so easy, right? So first of all, habits are something that we do on a regular basis. I think sometimes we hear that word habit and we think it's like biting our nails or doing something we don't want to do, right? Smoking. Habits can be really healthy things that we do on a regular basis. So it's really, how do we want to establish healthy habits? Because when we have a habit, we do them without thinking. So they're things that happen automatically. So especially if we create healthy habits that are really nourishing and nurturing to our soul, it becomes one of those things where we're just consistently filling our own cup. So habit stacking is taking a habit you're already doing in your life, and you have a lot of habits. You don't even realize how many habits you have. 45 to 50% of your daily actions are actually habits that we do. Every time you put on your pants, you put the same leg in first. When you tie your shoe, you tie the same shoe every single time first. That's just, so we already have habits established. What are some habits you already have? And then let's stack on top of them either before or after. So let's say, for example, you want to do more journaling and devotional work. Let's say that you want to do devotions and you want to do your journal. So a habit you already have in the morning is probably getting a cup of coffee. That's not something that's up for debate or you think about like, oh, should I get a cup of coffee? It's like, no, I'm getting my coffee, right? You get up, you go to the coffee maker. So that's something you've already established. That's a habit we already have. Well, we can stack on top of that. What if you leave your devotional right next to your coffee maker, right? So you get up, you're already going to the coffee maker, you get your cup of coffee. Guess what? Your devotional is right there. You're automatically cued, going to do my devotional, right? So there you've already stacked a habit. Then you work on your devotional. So you go over to the table to work on your devotional, and right next to that, you've left your journal. So again, you're building a habit and then you're stacking another habit on top of it. And then you stack another habit on top of it. What we want to do is we want to make it so working, if it's your devotional and the journaling you want to do, we want to make it so that it happens automatically without a lot of thought, without feeling like you have to fit it in your day. It becomes something that we're doing automatically on our own. So just building it off of something that you've already got established, things like, drinking your coffee, maybe it's, whatever it is you do right away when you get to work. Most of us have a routine. We don't even recognize it, just stopping and realizing it. Most of us eat lunch. That's a habit that we have every day, right? Coming home from the office, going to bed. We already have habits. these little keystones throughout our day that we can stack other things on top of, either before or after. And that way we're building in a lot of those things that we're really wanting to do more of automatically.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard about, not first, but when I really started kind of putting all the pieces together was when I was reading Atomic Habits, and just,
Yes.
just that trigger. It's just really triggers, setting up these positive triggers.
Yep, that's exactly what it is. Your brain gets triggered and then it goes, oh, I know what to do next.
Mhm.
This is really no different than having a morning routine, right? Or having an evening routine. If you think about it, you don't think about putting on your deodorant or brushing your teeth. These are things you're just doing automatically. And it's the same thing with whatever it is you're wanting to accomplish, whether that's running, going for a walk in the morning, doing a devotional, reading in your Bible, whatever it may be. You can stack it on these things you're already doing and just creating these little triggers for yourself so that it reminds you, oh yeah, that's right. Like if you want to floss your teeth, then leave your floss right out, like right next to your toothbrush. So then when you go to bed at night and you're getting ready for bed and you're already brushing your teeth, right? You're like triggered because there's my floss. I know I'm flossing next, right? We're taking the thinking out of it so it doesn't become a debate. Just like coffee isn't a debate. You're not like, oh, maybe, maybe not. You're like coffee, right? Same thing with these other habits.
So it sounds like the process is you decide what habit you want to be doing more of, and then you consider where is it a natural fit in my day with the other things. So I'm thinking a lot of our listeners spend time in the car, for example, either driving people places or waiting for people that they're driving places.
A lot of waiting. Yes.
So that might be a time when they could fit in a habit that maybe is a little bit more general. Whereas something like flossing your teeth, it makes sense to do it when you brush your teeth. So to be considering what is the habit and then where does it naturally fit stacked next to something else.
Yes, I wouldn't anticipate you wanting to floss your teeth in the car. Probably not going to work out so well.
Yeah.
So really thinking about, like, if you want to read more, leaving your book in the car. Instead of leaving it next to your bedside table, you're like, oh, I'm going to try to read. And then you're too tired when you go to bed. Start leaving it in your car, because then when you're waiting in carpool or you're waiting outside the gymnastics, arena or wherever you are, the book is already there. So again, it's triggering, and our visual cues are going to make that happen more often, right? So really leaving that out so you see it and it's like, oh, I have 15 minutes while I'm waiting. I can read my book. It's pretty amazing what you can do in that downtime. I think so often we forget about that time because it's these little tiny pockets of time. I wrote this latest book during the pandemic with 2 kids home, homeschooling, right? Running my business. People are like, how are you able to do it? I have pictures of me sitting outside of the dentist office, like working on my laptop, writing the book. We have a lot of time in there that we don't really recognize or use with intentionality. And it's really setting an intention for that space. If you want to do more of, like I said, reading, or maybe it's journaling, leaving that in that space changes that space from just being a car to your journaling area, to your reading space, or whatever it is you're wanting it to do.
Yeah. And making it really obvious, and making it so it's not just it's movable. It's not just a permanent object in a space, because then we forget about it. And then the object just becomes a part of that space and you don't see it anymore. So it actually, it's like all these tricks we have to play, but it's true. Like, I like what you said, you put the Bible next to the coffee, but then you're moving the Bible again. So it's just, it's where things aren't just permanently there, because then we start ignoring them, which
we do. And this is one of the big mistakes people make with their vision boards. I talk about this, I think it's in chapter 9 of the book, or chapter 8. Where, people create a vision board for what they want for the year and they place it on a shelf where it is literally gathering dust, and we forget to even look at it. So one of the things I started doing with my vision board is I moved it around. I almost always keep it somewhere in my dressing area. So in the closet or in the bathroom, but it shifts. And I put a little reminder on my calendar to move my vision board at least once a quarter. So it might live next to my shoes for a little while. Then it might live, next to where my toothbrush is. Then it might live over where my scarves are, depending on the time of year. And it moves around. It's like when you have a cup of coffee and you set it down and you promptly forget about it for like 5 days until it's like a science experiment. Same thing happens. We forget, it just becomes part of the background, part of the noise. So we want to really intentionally move things around and bring it to the forefront of our attention.
Yeah. So helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you're definitely giving us some secrets, like secret habits, tricks that we can do to get to where we want to go. Do you have any other secrets that you feel like are really critical when it comes to the idea of time management?
Oh my gosh, I have 3 billion secrets, but I'll just give you a couple.
Okay.
I would say one of my first secrets would be having planned reflection time, really being intentional about that. We talked about how January is a good time to make that happen, but anytime is. I go ahead and I carve out several hours 4 times a year. So usually at the end of a quarter, I will sit down and do a reflection, and I'll ask myself questions like, how do I feel about my goals? Are these still the goals for me? Do I need to make some adjustments? Do I need to throw away a goal? And I need to feel okay with throwing away goals, because goals should be thrown away from time to time. But really intentionally going ahead and putting those into my calendar, no different than a doctor's appointment, make sure that it's going to happen. So it's an intentional pause in my schedule to stop and reflect and to check in. How am I feeling? How am I doing? It's such a great thing to do for ourselves. I would say another one of my big secrets is, leaning on my team. I think that a lot of people, when they think about a team, they think about their team at work, but we have a team at home. I call my team Team Dalton. And I think one of the greatest gifts we can give other people, especially as women, is to allow them to support us. I think so often, especially as moms, we think our job is to support everybody else, and we wear ourselves out holding everybody out, right? And the truth is, when we allow other people to help us, that's a gift that we're giving. Think about the last time a friend asked you for assistance or asked you for help. How did you feel afterwards? You felt amazing, right? It feels good to help a friend. So when you ask for help, you're allowing somebody else to feel amazing. And that includes your team. We kind of touched on that idea of how I do this with my kids, but we do on Sundays as part of our team planning. We talk about who has a big week going on. How can we support that person? Sometimes that person is me. I have a big launch going on, or I'm working on the book really hard this week. What is Jack going to do to help support me? What is John going to do? Okay, Jack has a busy week this week. All right, Kay, what are you going to do to help your brother? What are we going to do to help support? And so really building in that team mentality, I think, helps, and asking for support. And then I would say my third secret is having the difficult conversations. I think a lot of times we think things are not possible for us, and it's simply because we've not had the conversation with the person we need to have it with. We think we don't have time because our kids have so many after-school activities, and we haven't had a conversation with them to see, do you like these after-school activities? Do you want to do these after-school activities? How do you feel doing all of this? Or we think, I want to start my own business, but my husband will never allow that. But we don't have that conversation, right? We don't allow them the opportunity. Most times when women push back, when I'm coaching them or working with them, and I say, you going to do this? And they'll say, oh, I can't do that. And I'll say, have you had a conversation? They'll go, oh, no. Because most of what you want is on the other side of a difficult 2-minute conversations. Once you get past that 2-minute mark, the conversation becomes easy, right? And if what we want is just, on the other side of that, why don't we get over that little hump? Why don't we start that conversation and get that going? Because you'll be surprised at how many people will jump in to support you or will encourage you on things that you didn't think were even possible. But give people that opportunity.
That's interesting.
2022, the year of 2-minute difficult conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's because that right there, I think a lot of women are like, oh, no. But you're so right that after the 2-minute mark, you've done the hard part of broaching the subject, because so many of us avoiders, I put myself in that category, we avoid, but then when we actually have the conversation, we realize it wasn't that bad. It was, I made it out to be something so much harder. And I would agree with you. I've never thought of it that way, but probably a lot of women, what's keeping them from stepping into new things is the fear of the conversation. Mm-hmm. So 2022, here we go, sisterhood.
I love it.
Well, thank you, Tanya. This has been so great. And I know you have a podcast where people can find out more. Can you talk about, just for a second, about your podcast and your resources?
Yes, absolutely. So The Intentional Advantage is the name of my podcast. And we dive into what that looks like to be intentional. As I said earlier, productivity is really just a vehicle for that intentionality of really choosing how we want to spend our time, how we spend our days, and how we deepen our relationships with those people that we love around us. So the best place to find me on The Intentional Advantage is really anywhere you listen to podcasts, but you can go to my website, tanyadalton.com. You can also find links to both of my books there, The Joy of Missing Out and On Purpose, which are also sold anywhere books are sold.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Tanya, and happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year to you as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye.